In this video, we're going to introduce the concept of finding the area of a circle or a sector. And I know you guys have found the area of a circle before, but what is the area of a circle? Well, given a circle, we're looking for the space that it takes up. And in 6th grade, I believe you guys learned that the formula for finding the area of a circle is pi r squared. So in this case, you need the radius. You must have the radius of the circle in order to solve for the area. So what is a sector? Well, in geometry, we learn about sectors and we have to find the area of sectors. So a sector is just a piece of your circle. Okay, it has a vertex at the center of your circle and it's just a piece of your circle. It's part of the entire area. So what would be the formula for finding the area of just a circle? Well, first off, you need to know the measure of this arc. You need to know the measure of that arc. So you take the measure of the arc and you divide it by 360, and then you multiply it by the area of a circle formula. This gives you, this portion tells how much of the area of the circle you need. And so say you need 10% of the area, then you take 10% of the circumference. All right, so that is how to find the area of just part of the circle. So I'm going to go over 4 examples here. They're very similar to the problems that you have on your homework. So if you take out your homework, you can follow along and figure all of the problems out. So number 1, it says find the area of the circle. Well, I just mentioned that the area of a circle is pi r squared and that you need the radius of the circle in order to use the formula. They didn't give you the radius of the circle. I gave you the diameter. So we need to cut it in half. So I need to take 4/5 and I need to cut it in half. I need to divide it by 2. All right, and that will be my radius. How do I divide a fraction by 2? Well, dividing a fraction is like multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'll take the reciprocal of 2 and change that division to a multiplication. And then I want you to notice this 2 and this 4 reduce nicely. So half of 4/5 is 2/5. So my radius is 2/5. So to calculate the area, you need to square 2/5. And remember, squaring 2/5 squared means to multiply 2/5 by itself twice. And when we multiply across the numerator and across the denominator to get 4/25. So I'm going to just leave this in terms of pi. 2/5 squared is 4/25 pi. Okay, so if you were going to plug that in your calculator and do a decimal approximation, you would plug it in like 4 pi divided by 25. And that would give you your decimal approximation. All right, so in terms of pi, that is your answer. Number 2. And we've all done this on our phones before. We've looked up our favorite store or our favorite restaurant on a phone, and they always ask you for the radius of your search region. So you are going to search for a store on your phone, and you tell it to search within a 5-mile radius. That means if you are sitting right here, you are going to search this circular region where the radius of this region is 5 miles. So that's really nice because the question is asking us to find the area of the search region. So again, my area's formula is pi r squared, and I have the radius this time. So it's pi times 5 squared, which is 25 pi. And what units will this be in? This will be in miles squared. So in terms of pi, that would be the area of the search region I asked my phone to search in. All right, so in problems number 3, 4, and 5, these are probably the most complicated problems on your homework because in this problem it says, given that a circle has a circumference of 120 inches, find the area of the circle. You're not given the radius, you're not given the diameter, and you're being asked to find the area of a circle. So how do you find the area of a circle if you're given the circumference? Well, I'm going to take and write down my circumference formula, and since my area formula requires the radius, I'm going to write down the formula for circumference that includes the radius and not the diameter. So I know the circumference of the circle is 120 inches. So I'm going to use my circumference formula, put in 120 in for my circumference so that I can find the radius of my circle. So I need to isolate my r, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. And when I divide 120 by 2, I get 60. So I have 60 pi, and that will be in inches because 120 was in inches. That's the radius I'm going to use in my area formula. So my area is going to be pi times 60 over pi squared. So to simplify this a little bit, I'm just going to write the 60 over pi twice, because I just think the math is a little bit easier here. And you're going to notice that one of the pi's reduces out. When I multiply 60 times 60, I get 3,600 over pi. And the units are in inches, so I know area is squared units. So the area of this circle is 3,600 divided by pi inches squared. So 3, 4, and 5 give you the circumference of your circle, and you have to find the area. So this is how you should do it. For problem number 6, we're going to move on to finding sector area. So the formula for finding a sector is the measure of your arc in degrees. So I'm going to put that as theta because we usually use some sort of a symbol for an angle, over 360 degrees times pi r squared. So we need the radius and we need the angle of our sector. So in our first example, they gave us the measure of the arc. Well, the nice thing about that is it is the measure of the angle. Those are the same things, right? So the measure of your arc is the same as the measure of your central angle. So the angle that I have for my sector is 60 degrees. So I'll put that in the formula for theta, 60, not 30. So 60 over 360 times pi, and they give us the radius in this case, which is 8, and we have to square that. So let's reduce our fraction here. I know the zeros cancel out. I know that 6 goes into 36 6 times, so I have 1 over 6 times pi, and then 8 squared is 64. I know that 6 and 64 reduce by a factor of 2. So my final answer is going to be 32 times pi over 3. And we can always plug that in our calculator if we need to. And I forgot my units, centimeters squared. All right, so I'm going to erase the formula down here so that I have enough space to do the problem. Okay, in this one, they give me a diameter. So I need to calculate my radius, and I know that my radius is half of my diameter. Also, they did not give me my central angle or the measure of my arc, but I know if this is 150, this whole angle adds to 180, so I know that this part must be 30 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and put 30 degrees in for my angle, 30 degrees over 360 degrees, times pi, times my radius squared, 5 squared. So again, my zeros will cancel out, and I know that 3 goes into 36 12 times. So I have 1 over 12 times pi, 5 squared is 25, and there's no common factors between 12 and 25, so this is my final answer, 25 pi over 12, and my units will be inches squared. All right, so the last example I'm going to walk through is this one. Notice that they gave us the arc measure of the piece of the pie that we don't want. So I know my entire circle has 360 degrees in it, right? This whole thing is 360. So I want to take away that 70 degrees to find out what the blue sector or the blue angle is. So when I take away that 70 degrees, the blue portion has an arc measure or a central angle measure of 290 degrees. And I have to half my diameter, so my radius is going to be 30 feet. So when I plug this into my formula, I get 290 over 360 degrees times pi, and then I have to square 30. So let's reduce this right now. The zeros reduce. 29 and 36 doesn't reduce anymore. So I'm just going to write it like this, times pi. And I know I'm just going to write out my 30 squared like this, because I know that 6 goes into 36 and 30. So I've got 6 goes into 36 6 times. 6 goes into 30 5 times. Okay, so now I have another 6 and another 30, and they reduce out. This becomes a 1 and this becomes a 5. So really what I'm down to is 29 times 25 times pi. And I know that 20, if I plug this in a calculator, let's see, I'm going to get 625 and another 4 is 100, is 725 pi. And since they gave me a diameter in 60 feet, the units will be feet squared. All right, so these are really close examples to the problems you have on your homework.